Hello everyone, this is Amanda with the LiveCoin Q&A. We just got an interesting email. This person thinks they have an extremely rare coin and they think there are only 3 of them known to exist, but I have a feeling they're not going to like what I have to say about it. I want to start off by saying, before I answered this question, I had a lot of research that I had to do because I had never heard of a Fort Ross token. So I have spent a lot of time researching this, and I have ended up putting a presentation together that kind of helps answer the question in this email. So let's go ahead and get started. This submission was from Raphael S. And the email said, I found this coin from Fort Ross with token on the front as I was fishing along the river. Don't want to say which river. I go back from time to time to see what else I can find. I contacted a professor back east, and he informed me that it is real and is not the Fort Ross token that they made copies of. He has seen the copy when he visited Fort Ross, and he was so amazed how this looks. I did some digging and only found 2 like the one that I have found. One was found in Russia by a man who was digging, and the other was found by a man digging around his farmhouse. I'm sending a few pictures. Hopefully you can let me know where it is from and its value since there are only 3. Thank you for your time. In that first slide you did see the obverse and the reverse photo. These are some additional photos of the edge that he sent, but I wanted to mention that if you think you have a coin that has some value over face value, I wouldn't recommend holding it like this. I would recommend holding it by the edges so you don't have oils and dirt from your fingers getting on the coin, so you're not leaving fingerprints, because that can hurt the value of a coin down the road. That's going to lead us into the presentation part. So this is a presentation about the Fort Ross, California souvenir tokens and what is the real story behind them. Before we get into the token itself, I did want to share some history behind Fort Ross so we can better understand the significance of the token. First off, the Russian-American Fur Company established Fort Ross in the year 1812. Fort Ross was established with the intention of taking advantage of the plentiful fur hunting grounds that were located on the California coast. There was also a goal of establishing trade with Spanish California. It was also used for agricultural storage and was responsible for supplying produce to Russian settlements located in Alaska. Even though farming there was attempted, level land was very scarce. The level land that was available was also not very fertile. Their grain was constantly rusting due to the coastal fog, and rodents were also responsible for damaging their crops. Following a few different ventures, the Russian company decided to stop operation in Fort Ross, and the last of these Russians that had set up here left in 1842. The California Landmarks League donated 3.01 acres of the fort site as well as the Russian chapel to the state in 1906. Pictured here is the Russian Greek Orthodox chapel, which was built around 1828. It's one of the several restored buildings that are still standing at Fort Ross today. In 1928, Fort Ross was designated as a state historical monument with the Division of Beaches and State Parks being in charge of it. In 1962, the state purchased 353 acres of land from the Call family. This family had purchased 2,500 acres of land in 1873, and some of this land included Fort Ross. Following this purchase of land in 1962, Fort Ross became both a state historic park and a national historic landmark. This is still accurate in present day, and the park is still open to visitors. Now that we know a little bit about Fort Ross, let's talk a little bit about the coin that inspired this token. The original coin that inspired this token was found during an archaeological excavation that happened in the Fort Ross Cemetery. Based on what I've read, this excavation was taking place from 1990 to 1992 and was directed by Lynn Goldstein. The coin is listed and mentioned on page 14 if you view the PDF file that I've linked in the description of the video. It's a pretty interesting read, and there are pictures included in that PDF. The coin that was found isn't the coin pictured, but the one pictured is an example of what it would have looked like. This coin is a Siberian 5 kopecks, which would have been issued during the reign of Catherine the Great. Now, this part is where it gets a little bit tricky. During the time period when this coin would have been brought to Fort Ross, this coin would have technically been demonetized already. This coin also wouldn't have held value for anyone outside of Siberia, as it wasn't legal tender anywhere else in Russia. There really was no logical reason for someone to have brought this coin with them to Fort Ross. I guess the mystery behind how this coin ended up at Fort Ross in the first place may have inspired them to think making tokens that looked like this coin would be a great idea. The Fort Ross souvenir tokens are cast copies of the real coin that was found there. The original cast was done by Bill Russell from Auburn, California. These cast copies were made to be sold as souvenirs, and in 1992 they were available for purchase from the Fort Ross Interpretive Association. Now that we know about both, let's compare both the token and the coin. The dead giveaway for the token is that it features the Latin spelling of Fort Ross, while the legitimate time period correct coin only features the Cyrillic language and it does not say Fort Ross on it. When looking at the cast copy, which is the one that has the red ring around it, you'll notice that the relief is much softer and mushy compared to the legitimate example, which is highlighted in green. The design elements also lack a lot of their details, and you can clearly see that the cast copy is much more crude looking than the authentic coin. As a conclusion, and to answer the viewer question, the viewer submitted example, which is pictured right here, is not an authentic coin and is one of the Fort Ross souvenir tokens. As for value, which we don't normally give, but I did try to look that up, the token definitely doesn't have as much value as an authentic coin would have. The most recent sale that I could find was an eBay auction that ended at $35 on October 8th of 2023. As always, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you happen to have a question about a coin or a piece of paper currency, please send an email with your clear photos and your question to info@livecoinqa.com and we will be happy to help you with your question. And thank you for watching.